requirement to be able to do fractions and multiplications.
I don't think our law students are too thrilled about doing that. Good morning, Thomas. How are you?
Very good, Neha. Good to see you.
Yeah. Well, we would like to welcome you to our Middlesex University Mooting Society's first ever video series where we interview lawyers across the region. And it's my pleasure to tell you that you are the first interviewee that we have.
Thank you very much.
So could you please start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm a Belgian national, arrived in the UAE a bit over 6 years ago, studied law at the Catholic University of Leuven, oldest Catholic university in the world, and I practice tax law.
Okay. So what got you interested in becoming a lawyer, and why did you choose this particular field?
I think I was always interested in law, and then bit by bit, tax kind of caught my interest. I wouldn't say that I started law school with the idea to do tax law, but I think what is interesting for me is the intersection between the legal aspects and more of the economical aspects and the financial aspects of taxation.
Yeah, that is quite unique. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about what taxation is and what challenges you faced while working in this field?
I think there's what it is a bit broad, right? I think everybody is kind of familiar with what taxes are. When it comes to studying the field of tax law, we analyze the legislation, try and see how it applies to specific situations that our clients or governments ask us, and we try and analyze what is the right outcome, maybe suggest alternatives and recommendations and so on.
Right.
I think challenges in practicing this field is, I would say, would be slightly different in Europe from here. In Europe, the challenge is very vast. There's a lot of things to read. It's very complex. When it comes to the UAE or the GCC, it's sometimes a bit the lack of materials that you have, or the lack of cases being public and so on.
Okay. I will get to the contrast between the EU tax model and the GCC tax model later. So did you know from law school that you wanted to work in tax, or did you figure it out later?
I think I figured it out later. When in law school, we had from time to time these training sessions with outside counsel. One of them was tax. I really liked those sessions, so once I finalized my master's in law, I did another master's in taxation, and it was a good choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's a moving field constantly. It's always in dynamic, really. The rules change a lot, so it's very interesting to follow and very challenging as well.
All right. So just relating to that question, do you have any advice for students who are trying to pick a niche? And like what should they keep in mind when they're trying to pick an area of law to work in?
I think the first thing should always be that you need to have fun at what you choose. I think that's important. And then I think secondary is the value of that niche in the market. I think there's certain areas of law which are less valued, others more. But obviously you picking one that you don't like, but just because of the potential economic outcome of higher salary and whatnot, is not going to make you happy either.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. That's valuable advice. So what do you think differentiates tax law from practicing in any other field of law? What do you think is special about it?
I think what is interesting is that, especially in this region, tax sits more in the finance department. It has links with the legal department, but if you're a more traditional lawyer, you'd find yourself in-house in the legal department, not in the finance department. I think in addition to that, you need to have a lot of communication with the accountants inside a company as well. And then I think you need to know a bit how to deal with numbers and have basic knowledge of Excel, really, because it is kind of requirement to be able to do fractions and multiplications.
Right. I don't think our law students are too thrilled about doing math, but okay. So I noticed that you've written for LexisNexis Law Alert, I believe. So what do you think is the importance of these publications, and how do you think you are contributing to making the general public aware of laws?
Yeah, so I think the contributions that not just me, but also the other people in the firm bring, I think we're trying to spread a bit of awareness, try to generate a bit of a debate where there's difficulties, bring perspective. I think as a student as well, it's nice to contribute to something like that.
Yeah.
And for example, in the diploma that we did together with Middlesex University, the best thesis will be published as well in that magazine. So
Right.
I think it's nice for a student to have a bit of to read these things as well, contribute and understand, what's out there, what people are writing about, what the hot topics are.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to also ask you some questions about corporate income tax,
Okay.
which has been in effect since the beginning of this year, if I'm not mistaken.
As from June, actually, from this year.
Oh,
it will be
okay.
event. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of curiosity around this because the UAE doesn't have anything except the VAT so
Yeah.
far. So I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, what is corporate income tax and how is it different from the VAT?
Yeah, so in conceptual or in scientific terms, VAT is an indirect tax and a consumption tax.
Right.
It only applies when you buy something. You buy a bottle of water in the supermarket or you go to the restaurant. If you don't buy, then there's no tax. Right?
Okay.
That's an indirect tax. Corporate tax is considered a direct tax. It applies on a ongoing situation of earning income. So it's not the specific moment that the salary, for example, if it would be for personal income tax, that's a salary, it's your bank account.
Okay.
It is rather the state of earning money after a certain amount of period. So in the specific case of corporate income tax, that is a company earns income throughout the year.
Right.
Throughout the year, there's no specific trigger points for corporate income tax to be payable.
Okay.
It's rather at the end of the year, you draw up your financials and then you calculate it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the major conceptual difference between the two. The other one is also VAT is on turnover and corporate income tax is on profits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. You've
Yeah.
explained it really simply. But I'm sure there's a lot of intricacies as well.
Yeah.
So I believe that the UAE is the fifth country in the GCC to introduce
Correct.
CIT. So what does this mean for the region? And I believe it has the lowest rate in the GCC as well, right?
Correct. Yeah. It does at 9%. It'll have the lowest rate in the region.
Right.
I think it's a paradigm shift for the UAE in that companies that were used to not having to pay anything are now going to have to pay 9% corporate income tax.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that. It's also around, okay, what corporate governance, are my financial statements correct or not? Have I identified all of the right types of expenses and income? Those are things that a lot of companies need to work on in the next couple of months. There's another additional evolution as well with something called the global minimum tax, sometimes referred to as Pillar 2 as well.
Okay.
That comes on top of the 9% corporate income tax. And that might mean that large businesses, that when they have an entity in the UAE or a permanent establishment, they're going to have to pay 15% corporate income tax actually.
Okay.
So it already increases quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So just to touch on the point that you made about Pillar 2 and OECD.
Yeah.
So do you think that the UAE corporate income tax regime is kind of based on the EU tax model perhaps? And if there's any similarities, what are the most prominent similarities?
So it's a relatively straightforward corporate income tax system, but it is a very, the design of it is very clever. Yes, it does draw inspiration from a couple of European countries, notably the Netherlands, the UK as well. Why is it important to look at these jurisdictions? Like, for example, the Netherlands, it's a very similar jurisdiction. It's a small jurisdiction, but an international one, trying to attract regional headquarters.
All right.
So it makes sense to try and see that, okay, what are the good elements of another law, and try and see if we can somehow transpose it as well here, if it makes sense or not. I'd say generally though, corporate income tax, the design throughout the world is always a bit similar.
Okay.
So it's not as if we could have taken it somewhere else as well as an example. Just here now, I think one of the reasons to look at Europe is the longer history in applying these systems, and maybe more lessons drawn from the past. Really,
Their laws are a lot more developed. Has gone through a lot of changes though.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the general procedures for registering and filing corporate income tax?
It's relatively straightforward and easier than VAT, for example. We did it yesterday. It took us took the Federal Tax Authority 3 hours to approve, which is super fast.
How much would it take for the VAT?
For VAT, it can take weeks sometimes.
My God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's pretty straightforward. Filing as well is simply uploading numbers, really. That's at least how it currently looks as if it will be. There is a lot of records keeping involved though.
Okay.
Which may need to be either presented at the time of filing or at the time of an audit.
Right.
So there's much more than that, but as such, the filing obligation as such is not too onerous.
Okay, that's good. So what do you think corporate income tax means for small and medium businesses?
I think it's obviously a major difference with 0%, right? On an international level, though, it makes a lot of sense for the UAE to apply corporate income tax, to not be labeled as a tax haven.
Yes.
Yeah, and that has a lot of advantages for businesses that are active internationally. When it comes to small businesses, that advantage is not really there, but it's somehow mitigated a bit by the fact that the first $100,000 is subject to 0% only. So there's a bit of a mitigating measure there. It's only, if you're I think that helps micro companies, but not necessarily SMEs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is our last tax-related question. So what advice would you give businesses who are trying to transition into this corporate income tax to accurately file and register and pay their CIT?
I mean, the first advice would always be to hire a tax advisor.
Yeah.
And beyond that, it really depends actually on your type of activity, type of company, what you already have in place. For some companies, the transition is going to be relatively simple. For example, because they operate in other countries where there's a corporate income tax system in place and they have all of the records already. Then it's a matter just of calculating how much it is, see if there's any specific matters which will impact that calculation, which maybe impact that company, review if there's other ways of doing this or mitigating the adverse consequences of it. So it really kind of depends.
Yeah.
As for the students of Middlesex, I think if you're in your last year, tax law is a really, really good option. There's a lot of demand, and it's a field which is only going to expand the next couple of years.
Yeah, understandably. Okay, so moving on to our last question for the interview. So what advice would you give my fellow students who are planning on going into the legal field?
I think, as I said before, you need to choose something that you like, that you have fun in. And above all, I think try to end up in an environment where there's real exchange of best practices, knowledge, because if you have that, then your development as an attorney, as a lawyer, is going to go much faster as well. You really need to work with colleagues or with a boss that says, I'm happy to sit down for a bit, or I have with you and explaining a couple of things, or we have infrastructure in place which helps you to talk to people who can help you understand things. We invest in training and whatnot, because essentially as a lawyer throughout your whole career, you might not be studying a master's, but you will be learning throughout your whole career.
Right. Okay, thank you so much, Thomas. It was very insightful talking to you, and I hope my fellow classmates will also benefit from this interview. Thank you.
Thank you very much.